And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have a returning good brother to help guide me through the world of Australian football. The man who helped bail us out of the one more day experiment from a while back, good brother Mace. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. It's good to be back in the temple. It's been quite a while, and thankfully I'm not dealing with another comic book catastrophe.
Yeah.
But instead I get to spread the good word of my native sport.
Mm-hmm. So, it's fun. I suppose I should give a bit of backstory on how this even came to be. This all started midway through us doing a watch party for at least the first half of the Super Bowl, which was both of us taking the piss out of how uncharacteristically bad the Chiefs were during that game.
Very, very much so. It wasn't a great day to be a Chiefs fan, as I am, but hey, you know, as I said on the day, the Eagles wanted it more, and they got it.
Mm-hmm.
Good on them.
Of course, when I look back in hindsight, there was a lot of getting bailed out through bullshit at the 11th hour with the Chiefs during the last 6 weeks, and I guess they finally fired the sixth bullet in the free shooter's rifle. If you catch my drift.
Yeah, they ran out of money to pay the refs off. In other words.
Mm-hmm. Because have you ever seen the opera The Free Shooter?
No, I haven't actually.
The character Rip Van Winkle in Helsing is kind of based on it. It's an old opera about someone who is given a rifle as part of a deal with the devil that will fire at anything he wants, except for the sixth bullet. The sixth bullet still belongs to the devil.
Okay. I'll have to add that to the list of things to see at some point.
Yeah, there's a day for Schultz. And I apologize for my bad German, but it's and you're dealing with a German opera, so you know how this goes. There are no happy endings with fairy tales or the like in that part of Europe.
No. Until Disney adapts them into something child-friendly.
Mm-hmm. There's a small twisted part of me that loved telling people who had seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame for the first time, hey, if you like it, you should read the book, and then telling them nothing. God.
Or anything by the Brothers Grimm. Hey, go read these childhood stories that you saw in Disney. Yeah, they're nothing like it.
I did that with Hans Christian Andersen regarding The Little Mermaid, and I was told not to do that ever again. Yep. I regret nothing.
Yeah. No, not at all. But yes, with the way this all came about was a lot to do with a very, very... Let's put it what it was. It was a boring ass game. Like, it wasn't that exciting of a game to watch, and we were just talking about different things. And I suggested you have a look into the Australian Football League here in Australia, otherwise known as the AFL. And the next day, you're messaging me back, going, "I need to know more."
Yeah. I saw one video I just saw one video on the AFL's official YouTube page that just broke down how the game works. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna need more of this. And while I'll never have confirmation, there's a small part of me that wonders if somebody who was designing Blitzball and FF10 wasn't looking at Aussie football as well.
Probably to a degree, but I think Blitzball, with it being the more underwater nature, is more akin to water polo.
Yeah, that's
more than it would be to any sort of on-ground sport.
Mm-hmm. I mainly thought that thought about that because of a certain stadium that was showcased, which I think houses like 100,000 people. It's just one giant donut.
Yeah, that would be the MCG, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which surprisingly enough doesn't host that much cricket during the year, but a lot of AFL games during the season. We're actually just started our first round of the new season this year.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect time for people to sort of ask questions and get answers and sort of see if they want to have a watch of this themselves. Don't ask me how you watch it in a non-Australian area because I don't know if there's any streaming platforms or anything that can be accessed easily.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the platforms, and I think a lot of people were using this during the Super Bowl as well. A site called 7 Plus, which is one of the Australian channels here that carried the Super Bowl for free. I think you needed a VPN in order to access it, so you could actually watch things. But they are hosting a lot of AFL games this year for free.
Yeah.
The only thing is the time frame sucks for Americans, as it's going to be most of our games usually don't start till 7:30 p.m. Australian time, which, if my math is correct, is somewhere around about 5:30, 6:30 US Eastern.
So we're
in the morning.
So we're talking Australian Eastern, right?
Yeah, Australian Eastern.
So 7:30. That'd be 3:30 p.m. my time.
Oh, there you go. Mid-afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Around that time, I will just be in the final hours of my day job. So there's that. But, and I also recall you saying that the nickname that it has is Footy, which you said is the most Australian thing ever.
Yeah, we love to shorten things as much as we can.
Yeah.
Such that an afternoon, we call it an arbor.
Yeah. Usually,
you go for a smoke. You're having a smoker.
Yeah.
Go to fill up your car. You do it as a servo. Mm-hmm. We don't like spending time speaking long words here.
Yeah, which, given some of the unholy syllable combinations I had to deal with when dealing with Polish names and terms, is a welcome change of pace at times.
Oh, believe me, while Australians do speak English, we do sometimes come off as speaking a completely different language.
In all fairness, language is a funny thing. In the sense that even modern English is a bastardization of 3 different languages just mishmashed together over the course of centuries, and then you have dialects, because plenty of people have seen the movie Fargo and get confused by just Minnesotans speaking. I'm like, I know plenty of people in my family who talk like that. There's no exception with like Southern drawl in some parts of the States, or Quebecois accents up in Canada. And of course,
I know I've spent many a time on TikTok. There's a certain creator on there. She's from Minnesota, and when she drops into that Minnesota accent, she actually has a series of videos called Minnesota Dirty Talk, which is absolutely hilarious because it's like the most probably Minnesota type sayings ever with that drawl on it, and it just sounds like it's sexual in nature. It's just fucking weird.
Yeah, that tracks. As somebody who's lived in the state my whole life, yeah, I've seen that kind of thing. And also, hello there, Mario. How appropriate that you come in on what is technically Mario Day.
Yes. March 10th, otherwise known as Mario Day.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of disappointed
so woohoo to you.
Yeah. Kind of disappointing that Super Nintendo Land didn't open up on this day.
It would have done really well, but you open it when it's ready, not when it's on a date.
Yeah. I think that's supposed to open up this summer, and it will be interesting next year when that day comes. But now as I understand it, the league itself is the AFL, which is pretty much the dominant league when it comes to Australian rules.
Well,
was this,
it all depends. It all depends on how you classify it, really. The AFL is an Australian-wide competition. It didn't used to be. However, dominant depends on where you go. In the state that I live in, Victoria, it is very prominent because that's where the whole thing started. It originally was the Victorian Football League, which now is tied in with the AFL Reserve. So sort of like, how to put it to you? It's sort of like you've got the National Football League, and then you've got like your college type thing. So it's like your B tier, same game, B tier type thing.
I think a better analogy would be Formula 1 versus Formula 2.
Probably. But if you go to the states of New South Wales and Queensland, the more dominant sports up there are what are known as rugby league and rugby union, which is more akin to your NFL gridiron style.
Yeah.
Except we don't wear pads like a bunch of pussies, and we don't throw the ball to each other. We just smack into each other until we get to the end.
Yeah. Everyone's more or less familiar with the term "give blood, play rugby." And
yep,
of course. Now, the point is that it's I understand it. The original form, the Victorian Football League, that got started in the late 19th century.
It started in. Hold on, I have to check some notes here. 1877.
Right.
So the later part of the 1800s, consisting of 5 clubs at the time: Albert Park, Carlton, Hotham, Melbourne, and St Kilda. Melbourne is actually the longest franchise or longest team in the entire competition, as it's been there since day one. Other clubs joined along the way, Geelong and a few others, sort of leading to a more AFL, a more Victoria-wide competition. It wasn't, the VFL stuck around and was sort of more of a regional, suburban competition until about 1999, where it was rolled into the AFL reserves. But the AFL itself was actually established during the early 1900s. So it's weird depending on where you go and see where the foundation lies.
Yeah.
Because like you had the original 5 teams, then eventually they morphed into the Australian Football League era, which would include a lot of teams that are still around today.
Yeah, and to be fair, when you're looking at the early years of certain sports, you're going to find a degree of weirdness. You're definitely going to find that with some of the very strange stories in the early years of college football in the States, like in the 1910s, as well as the worst beating in the history of beatings that there has ever been in that one Georgia Tech game that had a final score of 222-0, which is a case study in what happens when you end up getting on the bad side of John Heisman. Yes, that John Heisman.
The one that they named the trophy after.
trophy after, and the guy who pretty much invented half of the damn sport. Like the whole concept of the forward pass, that was his idea. The whole idea of saying hut to start a play, that was his call. The whole idea of having a down indicator and a game clock, that was his idea.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the same thing with the AFL and the VFL, was that the game itself would evolve over time, new rules being added, and the way the game played was instituted a bit differently. Like we did it was literally football. Basically, the ball that was mostly kicked. Then they started bringing in the hand pass into the game and setting things up like that. And then with changes in play styles, we had different ways of marking, how the rules were interpreted. The biggest one that we've had in the last probably about 10 or so years has been a lot to do with concussion protocols. How the game has, like, if you go and look up a video of an AFL game in even the 1980s compared to a game today, it is a completely different style of playing. Back in the 80s, it was a lot more rough and tumble. You had guys literally being elbowed in the head when they're going up to catch the ball and get a mark. These days, even hitting or bumping into your opponent is very frowned upon, because too hard of a hit and you end up with guys who end up having massive concussion damage. So the rules have been changed a lot to be safer. Not exactly more exciting, but safer.
Yeah. And, you know, I do remember us talking about that kind of thing, because no matter what, when you're dealing with folks moving at high speeds, things are gonna happen. Bodies are gonna collide. I remember us having a field day with one call during the Super Bowl that was deemed unnecessary roughness, and we were like, he's just, when you're that big, you're not gonna stop on a dime.
Yes, I remember that. We were I think it was one of the Chiefs guys, he tried to swat away a pass or something, and because of his momentum while he was in the air, he's hit the ground, stumbled forward, and knocked the guy in front of him over. So, and they called that unnecessary roughness or something like that. And I'm like, and we were both going, the dude's like, what, 230, 240, and 6 foot whatever. There's no way known he's going to be able to land on his feet while having the inertia of the momentum carry him without actually hitting somebody. It's physics does not work like that, despite what everybody seems to think.
Yeah, and even with the pushing towards having better protections when it comes to concussion protocol and the like, I think there's still an understanding that you got people moving very fast. You're gonna in sometimes more confined formations, things are gonna happen.
Yes,
it's a contact sport. Shit happens.
Yeah, well, that's sort of where the difference between like AFL and NFL come into play, is that the field that we are using is a lot larger than the average NFL field. I believe if I remember the math right, you could fit three or four NFL fields in a standard football field.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more room to move around, to maneuver, because it's not a stop-start game as much as it can be in the last 2 minutes. We're not stopping, setting a play, and then running the play. You're scoring as much as you can in the set time.
Yeah, and based on what I'm seeing, from goal to goal, it's about 170 yards. Though because it is a bit tricky to compare dimensions, because NFL is on a rectangle, and footy is on a oval.
Yes.
Though I think there's some that are a bit more circular in recent years, but it's usually between 135 to 185 meters, or 148 to 202 yards, goal to goal, and wing to wing is 110 to 155 meters, or 120 to 170 yards.
Yeah, your big AFL grounds like the MCG, Marvel Stadium here in Victoria, Suncorp Stadium up in Brisbane, and the I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's where WWE held the Elimination Chamber last year. They're all football grounds, and they're all the largest size, as that's the regulation for the AFL.
Yep.
Whereas the smaller ones you find are your more regional AFL reserves or VFL style grounds, where that's where a lot of the guys sort of cut their teeth and get their training in.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Like this is a very cardio intensive game for those of you who have never watched. Like those guys will run end to end over and over again for the span of nearly an hour and a half.
All the more reason to not wear pads, because
you don't want the extra weight weighing you down.
But don't want the extra weight, and doing cardio in armor is a challenge. I am speaking from experience as somebody who's worn full plate in August, which, by the way, don't do that.
No, bad idea.
But I wasn't even doing all that. I was doing cardio that in any other circumstance I could do, no problem. But when you've got an extra 100 pounds on you, you are sucking wind.
Oh yeah. And these guys, like, they're insane cardio machines. They do this, like, the average football game per quarter, played over 4 quarters, is usually about 10 to 12 minutes. And they're going full pelt the entire time. There is no slowing down. The only time you might get a break is when you take a mark, which is when you catch the football off a kick. You then get probably about 5 to 6 seconds to set yourself up to kick again, and that's the only time you get a break. Besides the rest periods between the quarters, which even then are less than 5 minutes per.
Yeah, I'm looking in the chat, and Joseph Luke had asked, what's the difference between rugby and American football? There's a lot, even more so depending on what region of the world you're talking about. The big thing is of course, no pads. Hence the phrase, give blood, play rugby. And
rugby, as opposed to AFL, rugby is basically all the guys get together, throw themselves into the middle, and try and push through to, like, break through the run to score a goal or a touchdown.
Yeah. It was
there's a lot of behind pass stuff like that. It's very much akin to NFL, just without the let's take 10 minutes to set up a play. As soon as somebody gets knocked down, they're basically straight back up, passing it via their foot underneath themselves to the guy behind, and run again.
Yeah. The infamous brotherly shove that some people want banned from the NFL was brought in because one of the new coordinators for the Eagles had a background in rugby.
Yeah, that's where that comes from. Like, and the thing is, like, imagine a game like that being played with the my region's equivalent of a bunch of Samoans. Like, we have our Maoris down here, which are like distant blood relations to the Samoans. So they're big dudes, and if they decide, hey, I'm going to pick you up and shove you through this forward line, you're going. You have no choice.
Yeah, but I suppose when it comes to that level of full tilt, the closest analog I can think of, even though the arena is nowhere near as big, is say old school basketball or hockey. Just in terms of going full speed for several minutes at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no quit in these games, which is sort of unfortunate because at the same time, we wish that things weren't as full on, because one of the biggest things in AFL to happen is guys get ACL tears, and that is one of the most common injuries because of all the running that the guys are doing. And that's not just running; it's the running, jumping, the kicking, everything. It takes a lot of leg strength to play in the AFL, and a lot of the times guys might not warm up properly or warm up enough to do this, which is why those ACL tears are very prevalent in the sport. But I really should probably do a better job of explaining all this, but this is mostly just a sort of a little Q&A session, just so monks can sort of understand it a bit more.
Which
so feel free to ask away, and I'll answer the best I can.
Yeah, I can get that. And now, obviously, when it comes to like NFL, you have a much bigger emphasis on positions and on the play setup, to the point where NFL games are not far removed from a chess match. With the AFL, is it a bit looser in terms of types of position that you'd be dealing with, as well as types of formation?
It's not so much formation, but we do have certain positions on the field that people will play at each end. Usually they try to split the field in half. So you have sort of you guys in the back line closer to a defensive position around your own goal, or you have guys up on the wings. You'll have guys on the forward line to try and get to pass to the guys in the forward line so they can be the ones that kick the goals and stuff like that. But you're playing offense and defense at the exact same time. And your position isn't really sort of like, hey, you can only run between X and Y distance. You could get a guy in the back line who gets the ball, and if nobody is on him, he can run all the way to the opposite end of the ground and kick it in for a goal. Or a behind. So we have two levels of scoring system. So we have what would be the equivalent of 4 goalposts. The ones on the very outer edges, between those and the ones in the middle is essentially a behind or a single point. If you kick it between the tallest 2 goalposts in the middle, then that's a goal, which is worth 6 points. So when you hear me talk about goals that are behind, that's the scoring structure. So you obviously, your goals worth 6, your points worth 1. There's a running total of both going on at the same time, so you get like say 5 goals and 2 points. So that's 5 times 6 plus 2, and that gets you your total score for that particular game. And some of these we can have low scoring games where like some teams might not score 20, 30 points, all the way up to, I think the highest I saw was a bit over 210. It was just a runaway game. It was like 210 to 60 odd or something. So over 100 points lead. Very hard for the team to catch up, even if they tried. But when it comes to positioning, you're not stuck in one field. It's not like, hey, you're a punter, so you've just got to punt. You're a quarterback, you can only throw or you can run. No, if you get the ball and you have the opportunity to, you can run as far as you can get before you either handball it to pass it to another player, or kick it to try and get somebody either in front or to the side of you, or even backwards.
Yeah.
In order to try and sort of reset the play, as it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do get that time from the second that you mark the ball, or when you catch the ball off a kick, to set something up so you can get the ball further down the field to the next player in line.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also run with it. The only caveat is that you have to bounce the ball against the ground once every 8 to 10 steps. So you have to keep that as mind as well. It's not, I'm going to tuck it underneath my arm and I'm going to run with it. No, you have to have it in your hands. And when you hit that eighth step, you've got to throw it to the ground at a specific angle so it bounces back to you. Because we're playing with an oval type ball, sort of like the gridiron balls.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, but so you're having to take something that is curved, bounce it in front of you while you're on the run, and get it to come back to you without it going all over the place.
Yeah, and that's ample opportunity for somebody else to steal it.
That's ample time for somebody to steal it. They can also tackle you as well, trying to get you to lose possession of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So any tackles around the chest and waist area are perfectly legal. It used to be that you could go as high as the neck, but again, because of concussions becoming so prevalent over the past couple of decades, or past for 50 odd years, that has been reduced to you can't tackle anywhere above the shoulder line.
And I'm guessing you can't go for the legs either.
You can, but you're running so fast that you're not really going to be able to grab a leg.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you get to the point where you've dived down to try and tackle somebody and you've missed them to the point where you're going to try and grab a leg, they're already gone.
Yeah, I'm mainly referring to things like chop blocking. No,
you can't chop block.
Mm-hmm.
You can't intentionally like dive into somebody's legs to try and knock them over. That's also illegal.
Yeah.
So it's mostly tackling with arms around the waist or underneath the chest area in order to tackle them to the ground to make them lose possession.
Yeah.
And that can result in what we call a ball up, which is where the umpire will come, take the ball at the spot that you were tackled down, and they will bounce it with two hands straight down in the air, so it goes straight up, and it's up to two people, usually called rocks, to jump up and knock the ball away to start possession again.
Mm-hmm. Not too far removed from like a tip-off in basketball.
Correct.
Now, I think most individual teams, they have a roster of about 22 to 28 players, if I got it right. How many are going to be on the field at any given time?
That's a good. 2 teams of 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 18 on field, 4 on the interchange bench, and they can be swapped out at any time. So you can't have any more than 18 on the field at any point in time.
Yeah.
So say a guy gets injured, or you just want to rest a player, they have guys called runners who will run out, quickly tap the guy on the shoulder, say, "Hey, need you off the field. We're bringing this guy in."
Mm-hmm. And
that's how they rotate some players through.
And which makes sense. You see a lot of rotation in like hockey. In fact, there's usually like 4 lines worth of rotation when it comes to teams who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But since hockey is a smaller arena, you can just have them come off the bench like that.
Yeah, exactly. You do have a one extra guy who's usually an emergency sub.
Mm-hmm.
So say somebody gets injured, they come off the field. Like they pull the injured person off the field and they come straight on.
Mm-hmm.
Not a part of that 22-man roster.
Yeah. And just to make the hockey comparison again, there's things like the emergency backup or the emergency backup goalie, which everybody learned about after that one incident a few years ago where the Leafs lost to their own Zamboni driver.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. You talk hockey with Maddie, and it just goes straight over my head. I'm not a hockey man.
yeah. And this is a case where you don't necessarily have to be. What happened was they had to call both of the goalies both of the goalies for the Leafs were going against got taken out on injury, so they had to bring in an emergency backup goalie. The goalie that they did just happens to be an employee for the Leafs. The Zamboni is that big thing that you see between games. You may have seen Stone Cold riding one.
Yeah, yeah, I know what a Zamboni is.
Yeah, he drives that for in the Leafs arena. He also plays on their minor league team, which was what made the thing such a meme. Like you lose to your own employee. But with that, since it does sound like formations and plays aren't, they certainly have its place, but not in the same way, not in the same chess match kind of way. In that regard, if I were to make a football analogy, the closest analogy I'd make is not necessarily the NFL, but rather the CFL up in Canada, which has far more open spacing when it comes to player placement, and is far more of a shootout compared to the more defensive-minded plays of the NFL.
I'll have to take your word on.
It definitely seems that a very wide setup with a lot of shootout is going to be par for the course with the AFL.
Again, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
You compare it to something Canadian, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Point is, I have a feeling that player placement isn't going to be as tightly packed.
No, it's not. You've got a large field that you can work with, so players are going to be spread out all over the place. But placement is also paramount to getting the ball up and back down the field. So you want to try and have guys in what commonly referred to as the corridor, which is just a set line where you have one guy kicking it to the next guy, to the next guy, to the next guy, down all the way down until you get within goal scoring range, which can happen anywhere on the field. Anywhere. Usually most guys try to go within a 50-meter boundary from the goals. There's actually a line on the field that indicates where the 50-meter marker is. But there are some guys that can kick beyond that, 60, 70 meters. Which is why, if you've noticed in the NFL, there's been a big trend in Australians becoming punters over there. Because we can kick the entire length of your field if we feel like it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there's got to be at least one video of somebody trying that.
I'm sure there is an Australian punter that stands at the goal line of one end and goes, you know what, I can do that, and just kicks it all the way straight through the goalpost at the other end.
Yeah, which is going to be completely insane for a lot of NFL scouts, because there's usually a general rule that you should not be trying to kick a field goal more than 40 yards from goal. You can do it at 50 or so, but you are pushing your luck with a lot. But
it's also for that. It's not so much that we're being scouted for the distance; we're being scouted for the accuracy.
Yeah.
Australian footballers are extremely accurate with their kicks, which is why they are great choices for NFL punters.
Yeah,
because we know how to line a curved ball up to go between a very specific set of sticks.
Yeah, and especially since I wasn't gonna make a comparison when it came to distance between the sticks, but I'd say it's about the same.
Relatively similar. Yeah, it's. I don't know the exact measurements offhand, but from my experience, like I have trained a little bit in, well, we call it gridiron over here, but what do you call AFL football? I spent a little bit training to try and play that. So from my estimations, from what I've seen and personal experience, they're about the same width.
Yeah.
Between the goalposts.
Yeah, it's about 7 yards, which is slightly wider, but when I say slightly, I mean it's not enough to be significant.
Yeah, it's negligible.
Yeah, so a word that a certain yacht should be very familiar with these days.
But and that's the other thing with kicking the goals as well. Unlike the NFL, where if you hit the posts and it doesn't get counted or something like that. If you hit the posts with an AFL game, it counts as a behind. So even if you hit the post and it goes into the goal area, because it hits the post, it is counted as a behind.
Yeah.
So in order to score the goal, you have to go clean through the two middle sticks.
Sometimes the NFL or college ball will count it if it hits the post but still goes through. Which is which results in some of the more famous memes.
Yeah.
It's when it hits the post and then bounces right off and doesn't even cross the threshold that it doesn't count. But
that's the thing with ours. It's if it hits the post, regardless, it is counted as a point.
Yeah. At the very least, you don't have an equivalent of a safety, which you don't see as often in.
Technically, yes, we do have an equivalent to that. Again, it counts as a behind, but it's either called a forced or rushed behind. Yeah. And also the other thing that needs to be aware of is that if you put the ball through the goal sticks. With anything but your foot. So say you tumble through the goalpost, you knock it up with your hand or something like that, it counts as a behind. So that's sort of our version of a safety.
Yeah. Yeah. Just not as embarrassing as some safeties have been. There's the infamous clip of former Viking Jim Marshall running the complete wrong way for a safety and nobody told him.
No, we don't really have that. Most AFL players know which end they're going towards because that's where usually everybody's going. Kick it to me!
Yeah. To play devil's advocate, that particular incident happened back in the 70s, where the rules were a bit looser, which is where you get things like the holy roller. If you're familiar with that incident.
I am not.
So this is the case of brilliant stupidity that came from the mind of John Madden during his time with the Raiders. And the day after it was pulled, the NFL was like, nope, you're not doing that shit again. He needed to make a long drive in order to get a touchdown to win a game against the Chargers. Fuck you, Spanos. And his approach was to have them... And thank you, me ASMR, for the follow. Welcome to the monastery. But the approach was to basically fumble the thing forward. And just keep fumbling it forward. until he got close enough to just run it and get a touchdown.
The great fumble risky.
Yeah. It has been given the nickname the Holy Roller. It was banned the next day. And
Yeah, I think I saw. I think they referenced it in The Simpsons once.
yeah, it was one of the more infamous cases of that. Like I said, you look in the early days of sports and you find weird things or just things that people did to get away with them. I'm pretty sure there's a few stories in the AFL of somebody doing something monumentally stupid in order to get away with a win that the league said you're not doing that again.
Yeah, as it is with any sport, the only way you're going to sort of build the rules or sort of get everything up and running and work out what works, what doesn't, is to try different things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's obviously going to be times when people are going to do things differently, do things stupidly, just to see if it works. And if they get away with it, well, okay, until it gets banned, they're going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. And when it comes to the team setup, actually before I even get to that, what's usually the date range when it comes to the beginning and end of the season?
Usually runs March to September.
Mark.
So usually early March, probably first or second week of March through to the it's the last week of September is usually when the grand final or our version of the Super Bowl takes place.
Mm-hmm. And there was, after the Chiefs lost, there was a bit of a talk about how hard it is to three-peat, and a big reason for that is, unlike a lot of other sports, the NFL is still doing a single elimination tournament. Is the playoffs for the AFL in a similar single elimination, or is it a different format when it comes to like getting to the playoffs?
We run a top 8 format. So throughout the year, there are certain things that contribute to the points. Obviously, wins, losses, draws, stuff like that. Obviously, the guys who are winning are going to be on top because they're getting points throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a culmination of the totals that you get throughout each game. So it's like I can't remember the exact values, but it's like you get a certain for a win, you get certain taken off for your losses, draws worth X amount, that type of thing. Because we also have what's known as a bye week for each team. They get 1 week off throughout the season. Mm-hmm. Some of them get 2, lucky bastards. Otherwise, they're playing straight through. Usually it's the 6 or 8 weeks. Usually somewhere around about the start of August to mid-August we'll go into the playoff, like a playoff style. It'd be like almost like a single elimination from there. Mm-hmm. So you get your top 8 from the year, pair them off, and they play off against each other until you get down to the final 2 teams to go into the grand final.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually, so if you're doing the 8, so you'll do 4 in 1 week, then 2, and then you down the grand final. So it's a pretty quick to get to the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even though the actual winner of the grand final is called the Premier, I believe there are still a few medals that are given out to people who performed very, very well in that year.
Yes, there is an award known as the Brownlow Medal, which is the main for the best and fairest. Mm-hmm. The best and fairest player voted on by the umpires. Then you have the Coleman Medal, which is awarded to the player who kicks the most goals during the season. Mm-hmm. You got the Rising Star Award, which is usually the best and fairest player under the age of 21. Mm-hmm. Got the Norm Smith, which is the best player on the ground at the grand final, which is sort of like your MVP. Mm-hmm. That only happens at the grand final.
You've got the Jock Mahale Medal, which is awarded to the coach of the premiership winning team. Then you've got other things like Mark of the Year, Goal of the Year, Lee Matthews Trophy, which is best player in the league, the Ron Barassi Medal as well, which is sort of like one of the that's sort of like I'd probably say it's closest to probably like the Madden Trophy or something like that. Like so, Ron Barassi was a really one of the great players of the 50s and 60s, and one of the who turned coach during the 70s and 80s. Was a really good ambassador for the sport, so he was given the honor of getting a medal named after him.
Yeah, I can
yes, there's a bunch of awards, but basically the main one that everybody wants to get at the end of the season is the Brownlow Medal, which is basically the best player as voted by the umpires for the entire season.
Yeah, I can get that. Now, since I kind of danced around it a little bit, but this is where it comes to getting into the teams, and obviously going into whole history with some of the teams is going to be very tricky with how old some of the teams are. So what I'm gonna do is just go top to bottom. You can tell me where this team kind of stands, what their equivalent might be in terms of their recent performances. Who's the Empire, who's the locales, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I'll start with the Adelaide Crows.
Adelaide Crows came into the competition during the mid-90s. They were one of the first intentional interstate expansions of the league. Not a bad team. They sort of end up sitting mid-tier most seasons. I can't really sort of like equate. Like the hardest thing is going to be like trying to equate these to any other teams. Everybody plays the same game, but at the same time, it's like because everybody's sort of similar in style. There's not really that much differentiation. So, yeah, Crows, nice mid-tier team. Have no love or hate for them.
Yeah.
They do all right.
No, they haven't won a premiership since, according to what I've got, 1998.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I can't remember. I kind of Sydney's been Sydney Swans have been a pretty dominant team for the last few years. They were actually originally called the South Melbourne Bloods. They were a part of the South Melbourne area down here in Victoria before they got tempted and moved up to Sydney and became the Sydney Swans. So, really good. They're a really good team. Very, very strong, very dominant when they can be. They play a very solid 4 quarters of football.
Yeah, but then there's the most recent premiers, the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, Brisbane Lions came about due to issues with 2 particular clubs, the Fitzroy Lions and the Brisbane Bears. Both of them were struggling financially. Both of them were on the verge of closing the clubs, but they decided to merge into one team and move them up to Brisbane. So basically, Brisbane from the Brisbane Bears and the Lions from the Fitzroy Lions. There's not really that much of the original team left with pretty much any of these teams really, because that merger happened late 90s, I think. Don't quote me. But yeah, they're one of the only real sort of merged teams in the company, in the franchise, at least as long as I've been alive.
So then there's the Carlton Blues.
Yes, they have been one of the older teams in the group.
Mm-hmm.
Not really much to say about them because they don't really go anywhere. They try really hard, but they don't seem to quite win as much as they should. It's a lot of restructuring needed in that team to get them back to their glory because they haven't won anything in a long time. Like it's yeah. Unfortunately, they've been one of the perennial losers.
For whatever reason,
You could almost say, "How about them Cowboys?"
Yeah, I was about to say. I was thinking of like the Cowboys or like Notre Dame, just in terms of being this blue blood of the sport, but hasn't really done anything in quite a while.
Yeah.
I came across somebody who made a whole video about the Fighting Irish and how
Well, there's plenty of fighting to be done down in Carlton if you ever go there.
But then there's the Collingwood Magpies.
Oh, all right. Here we go.
Oh,
you want the team that makes the memes? That's the Collingwood fucking Magpies.
Are we talking memes as far as choking, or are we talking memes as far as getting in the wrong
They're
way?
supporters. They're supporters.
Oh, it's one of those.
Basically, we say, "Hey, you have no teeth. You must belong to Collingwood." You are the most bogan piece of trash, redneck looking motherfucker with one tooth. Oh, you got to be a Collingwood supporter.
Oh boy.
And they fucking hold that reputation. They are some of the loudest, most vulgar, most fucking redneck style of fan in the entire sport. And we give them shit for it.
I'll give them credit at the very least. It sounds like they own that reputation.
Well, they have no choice. They got nothing else going for them.
Yeah, but then we have the Essendon Bombers.
My boys. That's my boys.
Mm-hmm.
I bleed black and red. That's been my team since I started following football at like the age of 6.
Mm-hmm.
We did go through some troubles in the early 2000s. There was a bit of a doping scandal going on.
Mm-hmm.
Some doctors that were hired decided to put some illegal shit into the boys, and the coaches didn't know about it. The players didn't know about it, but once it came out, the entire team got dragged through the mud.
Mm-hmm.
People hate us when we win, because they just can't stand us winning. Like, you could almost see where the chiefs of the AFL.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
Everybody hates a winner, and when we win, they don't like us at all.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're constantly going, "Oh, you cheating, you did drugs once." Oh, fucking most of those players are gone now. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure anybody who was involved in that doping scandal isn't on the staff anymore.
Very much. The doctors have all been fined, suspended, some even jailed.
Mm-hmm.
The coach, James Hurd, at the time, he is retired. He has nothing to do with the club anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's one of those things of those who needed to be caught out and punished got caught out and punished.
Yeah. Oh. It'd be about as ridiculous as say people still banging on about the whole Deflategate thing that had no teeth a few years ago, or getting on the Saints for the whole Bountygate scandal from
essentially
from a decade ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or I was going to bring up all the stuff with the Yankees, but karma has been has gifted the Yankees exactly what they deserved several times over.
Yeah.
And I get to watch salty Yankees fans every year, which is always a treat. But then there's the Fremantle Dockers.
Yep. What about them?
Yeah,
they're one of those teams that I sometimes even forget exists. Like they came out the gate, they tried so well, and 99% of the times they're close to the bottom of the ladder every year.
Yeah, apparently they've been around for 30 seasons, and in that time they have
have
made a
accomplished
single
sweet
premiership.
fuck all.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, not even getting close.
But then we have the. Oh, go ahead.
You can lump the Gold Coast Suns and the West Sydney Giants in with the Fremantle.
Mm-hmm.
All the same type. They're more recent teams that have been added to the franchise, well, to the sport. They haven't really accomplished too much. The Suns, I think they got one premiership, if I'm correctly, or came close.
Based on what I'm seeing, they didn't get any.
There you go.
But
I must have imagined it.
Mm-hmm.
or I'm getting it mixed up with playing a game on the PS4 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then there's the Geelong Cats.
Geelong.
Yeah, Geelong. Sorry.
That's okay. Geelong was one of the first additions to the VFL roster.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very proud team. They play really well. They have the good years. They have the bad years. They do what they can, and usually you'll see them either on the edge of the top 8 or in the top 8.
Mm-hmm. One of those consistent playoff pests.
Yeah.
You already mentioned the whole thing with the Suns, which they're since it says they were founded in 2011, as far as when their inaugural season was, that's still relatively young by the standards of sports franchises. So it's just a case of trying to find their footing.
Yeah. And I can remember watching one of their first games against Essendon, and they lost by like 120.
So
it was a runaway. It was hilarious.
Why am I thinking of the Cleveland Browns?
Possibly.
I don't think it's as cursed.
It's like, hey, you're cute. You're here in the big leagues. We're going to use you for fucking training.
Yeah, I mainly think of that because of the. Something to keep in mind with the Cleveland Browns is that the version that you see nowadays is not the original version. The original Browns are what's now known as the Ravens, through multiple reasons. The Browns that you know of were an expansion team that came around in the early 2000s. And their first game on Monday Night Football in the Dog Pound in a brand new Cleveland Browns stadium, which is where they've been playing since. They have Drew Carey out there hyping up the Dog Pound up against their old rival in the Pittsburgh Steelers. 67-0 Steelers.
Oh, God.
And that was a prelude to all the curses that would afflict the Browns in the years since, including not one but 2 staph outbreaks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they weren't the only teams that got hit with it, but you combine that with all the other stuff, the infamous Bottlegate situation, which wasn't a cheating scandal, it was a referee fuck up that got the fans so pissed off they started throwing bottles onto the field. This was still glass bottles. This was like 2004.
Yeah, luckily we don't have to deal with people throwing stuff onto the field at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one thing I'm glad about.
But then you already mentioned the GWS Giants, Greater Western Sydney, who
correct.
Their inaugural season was a year later, and and I see the same issue there. Starting relatively recent and not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have the Hawthorne Hawks.
The great team of the 80s. It used to be the saying that you go to a Hawthorn match, you go for the football, stay for the brawl at halftime. Because that's the thing. Look, a lot of their players were very aggressive, and this was back in the old days where there were a little bit more lax rules. You get away with some big hits and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often, usually sometime in the first 2 quarters, you will see an all-in brawl with Hawthorn and whoever they're up against. They'll find a way.
Yeah.
So you go for the football, you stay for the fight.
Yeah, in hockey, the Philadelphia Flyers were like that. They had gotten the nickname the Broad Street Bullies because they're to the point where they were the team that ended up embarrassing the Russians back in the 80s before the Miracle on Ice. The basic approach is we can't outskate these guys, so let's just get the most brawlic motherfuckers we can find. To the point where the Russians tried to quit mid-game until the commissioner of the NHL said, "If you guys quit, you're not getting paid."
But yeah, no, it used to be. It used to just be. You just wait for it, and here comes the good old Hawthorn Pipper.
Mm-hmm. Oh, which is all fair. And it's funny that both this and the NFL had a history of very brawl-heavy teams. The NFC North back in the 70s and 80s was called the Black and Blue Division. Just because you had a lot of big guys who would hit really damn hard, even with all that padding. A lot of defensive teams were out for blood, and the NFL has always been a defensive-focused league, and it's even more so in the northern Midwestern parts of the country. So it is funny that there's that parallel there. But then we have the Melbourne Demons.
Oldest team in the league. Quite good back in their heyday. Not so great now. I've seen the last few seasons they've been very consistently at the bottom of the ladder. But they've got the history, they've got the tradition, so they ain't going anywhere.
Yeah. I guess I could compare them to the Leafs. Except they've won a premiership, so I can't compare them to the Leafs. The Leafs haven't won it.
Melbourne have won quite a few premierships in their day, so they have a good history. It's just that the follow through hasn't been in recent.
Because apparently they did win in 2021, according to my notes. So they can say that they've been a recent winner. I don't know, maybe just championship hangover the last few years.
Sorry, I saw sorry for a second there. What
I was
saying, question?
They won in 2021 apparently, so maybe just championship hangovers. Maybe.
Like you'll have teams that will go years, decades without winning a premiership. Sydney Swans being a great example. They went nearly 30 odd years without winning a premiership, and then all of a sudden they won like back to back to back.
Yeah, but then we have the North Melbourne Kangaroos.
Yep, they're a thing.
They've
not really much to say about them, man. They're another one of those teams that are like, oh yeah, you guys are still around.
Yeah, I guess you could call them one of the Blue Bloods because of how long they've been around, but apparently they haven't won a premiership since 1999.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since they've been anywhere close to a premiership.
So it sounds like if if I was doing the way I rank NFL teams during my my seasonal predictions, they'd be in the punching bag category.
Probably.
In fact, we'll revisit that tier setup in a bit. But then there's the Port Adelaide Power.
Yep.
Who are? It sounds like.
I'm sorry. A lot of these teams, like the Port Adelaide, they came in after the Dockers. They were okay. Nothing really spectacular to talk about these days.
Mm-hmm. They've been around for a while, but just kind of
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's the Richmond Tigers.
Another one of the original teams of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Good, proud history. My mother's a fan. I don't know why. But, yeah, good, solid team. They're like you said, sort of like Geelong Cats. They're a bit of a playoff pest.
Mm-hmm.
They do well enough to make the 8. To win a premiership, not quite.
They won in 2020, but nobody counts 2020. Everybody wants to just forget that year.
Yeah.
Then we have the St. Kilda States. Saints. I don't know why it's States.
Very solid team. Been to quite a few of their games actually with a mate of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I actually sat with their cheer squad when they played against Essendon one year and we beat them. Funnily enough, it was the year that they almost went undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
We were the ones to break the streak, and oh shit, did I have to get out of there fast after that?
I can imagine.
Well, usually behind each goal area is usually the big cheerleader section.
Mm-hmm.
The whole front area behind the goalposts is usually the cheer squad for each team. So my friend was able to get tickets to sit with the cheer squad on the St. Kilda side. I'm sitting there in my Essendon jersey. And we beat them, and I suddenly got up and I just went off like a fucking rocket towards CX because I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here, else I'm gonna get fucking king hit or something while I'm sitting in with these people.
So the equivalent of the heel trying to get out of the building in the territory days.
Yeah. Yep. I was Ric Flair in a heel sense. But
so it seems they
very passionate fan base. Good on them. They really got a good passionate fan base. Again, they are a team that again will sit as a playoff pest, if not a premiership contender most years.
Yeah, though apparently they haven't won the premiership since '66.
Yeah.
But you already kind of hinted at the Sydney Swans about how they went decades not winning anything, and then suddenly become a dynasty.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had some friends of the family that were very excited when that happened.
Yeah.
It was quite funny because one of them, I refer to him as Papa Ron.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, he's got what is it? Macular degeneration.
Mm-hmm.
His eyesight is all but gone, and he has been a mad Sydney Swans fan for so many years. And I can remember, like, he literally has to sit next to the TV to see anything. And I can remember being there during the grand final when the Swans won. For a dude that at the time was in his late 70s, needs to walk with a cane and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
He got up. I swear you'd think there was nothing wrong with him.
Yeah.
He was that happy to see that.
Yeah. When when the Swans ended up moving, was there a bit of a fuss?
It happened before I was even born, so I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that happen. To bring things back to the Browns, there was when the Browns moved to Baltimore, there was a bit of a reaction. You know, people just breaking apart parts of the stadium, and one woman had said to a local newscast, "Well, we'll get a team and we'll get a new team and win a Super Bowl before Art Modell, who was the owner of the then Ravens at the time when they moved." And about 3 years after that move, the Ravens end up winning the Super Bowl. The Browns have never won a Super Bowl.
Well, if there was a big kerfuffle at the time, it would have been because Sydney would actually be the first interstate team in the league. So it was taking a established Victorian side and moving it to Sydney, which sort of pushed the AFL to go from being the VFL, the Victorian Football League, to the Australian Football League, because we now have to include New South Wales and Sydney in the grouping.
Yeah. And even with that, there's still a good amount of teams that I see on the list that are in Victoria.
A majority of them are. Richmond, Geelong, Essendon, Carlton, Hawthorn, St Kilda, North Melbourne, Collingwood, the Western Bulldogs, Melbourne. They're the Victorian teams. So Gold Coast Suns, Northwestern Sydney Giants, Fremantle Dockers, Port Adelaide, Brisbane Lions, West Coast. They're interstate teams. Mostly Queensland and New South Wales, with the exception of Adelaide, which is South Australia.
Yeah. But
so we don't actually have a team in Port Adelaide's also New South Wales. We don't actually have a team in Western Australia yet, or the Northern Territory, or Tasmania.
Yeah, I know that the Tasmania, that's going to be changing in 2028 when the Devils start playing.
Correct.
And I expect them to get their ass kicked their first year, because that's how expansion teams work.
Yep.
Doesn't matter the sport. When a new team comes in, they usually struggle the first couple of years. I know some people say, "What about the Golden Knights in the NHL?" That was a freak case. Even their owner during the expansion draft said, "We are probably going to struggle our first 2 years, and then we're going to start pushing for a cup." They end up making the Stanley Cup Finals their first year, which is completely unprecedented and got a lot of Canadian fans triggered, because a lot of Canadian fans were like, they were given a golden ticket. I'm like, not really. Most of the time when you're dealing with expansion drafts, you're getting cast-offs from other teams because everybody's going to have a few players that they can protect.
Well, that's going to be the same thing with Tasmania. They're going to be getting a few cast-offs. They've actually secured a few names from other clubs, like some bigger names. The biggest problem that they actually had was with the name, because even though the Tasmanian Devil is an animal that is exclusive to Tasmania, Australia, they had to fight Warner Brothers to get the name.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me, and I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't really much of a case, simply because of well, first off, there was probably a whole lot of arguing about about venue, but second off, there's a rule in law called genericide. I'm not sure if there's a similar thing in Australia, because obviously my legal background, which is minuscule at best, is mostly with U.S. law. But genericide is when you're dealing with things that are too commonplace to really have a source. Some years back, the guys behind Duck Commander, the thing that would become Duck Dynasty, tried suing James Harden when the whole Fear the Beard thing started being part of James Harden's merch. The case got thrown out.
Yeah.
And it was thrown out with, I think it was thrown out with prejudice, which is basically saying, get the fuck out and don't bring this shit to me again. If something's thrown with prejudice, it means you can't refile.
Yeah.
But
with the Tasmanian Devils, it was more so because technically their logo is an illustrated Tasmanian Devil.
Mm-hmm.
Is where they ran into the legal issue. Because for a drawing of a Tasmanian Devil is still registered as a protected trademark of Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So to use that in any capacity, they had to approach Warner Brothers and go, hey, we're doing this. And Warner Brothers went, we don't really like that, but we'll see you in court, I guess. And eventually it was just like, yeah, this is for a sport, yours is for a cartoon. Shut the fuck up.
Pretty
So,
much.
Plus the other thing was, yes, you have the trademark on a character called a Tasmanian Devil. The actual animal that it's based on is in their fucking state. So, they're using the actual animal as a part of their logo in the state where they find the animal. So there's a bit more of a precedent where we can tell you to go fuck yourself.
It would be about as ridiculous as if the Minnesota State Lottery sued the MLS for Minnesota United because they have the loon on their logo. The common loon is the state bird of Minnesota.
Yeah, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to sue a team or a company or something that is doing something that is native to their area,
mm-hmm.
versus a scribble on a piece of paper that you claim you invented years ago.
Yeah, and now technically speaking, can you see loons in Wisconsin? Yes, but people are always going to associate them with Minnesota. That's just, like I said, it's the state bird.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, well, plus it's also in the name, Tasmanian Devil.
Mm-hmm.
Tasmania.
Yeah. But when it comes to skipping over the Swans, since we already kind of went over that, then there's the West Coast Eagles.
Yep. Once a very dominant team, falling on hard times, lucky if they can go mid-tier most seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, it's like I say mid-tier, but that's the great thing about AFL is you can't really categorize each team into a certain area. Like, you can turn around and make the joke of, these guys are the Cowboys. It's just like every team each season can perform so differently from the last.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who was in last place, which we call the wooden spoon,
mm-hmm.
they can go from being last place on the ladder to first on the ladder the next year. It comes down to the players, the coaches, the conditioning. So many factors can change year to year. You can see great teams. You can see great teams who are on top for a few years suddenly drop right down.
Yeah.
So you cannot sort of go, hey, these guys are the perennial losers, because you never know who's going to lose year to year.
Yeah, that's why I kept making analogies to hockey, because in the NHL you can have a team that's the bottom bitch one year that ends up winning the next year. That has happened. Or you can have cases where...
And a lot of that also has to do with funding.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the lower you end up on the ladder, the more funding you can the more your funding cap is raised the next year.
So it's not just a case of, if you're at the bottom you get a good draft pick.
Yeah, so you can get better draft picks, but you can also be given a lot more leeway on your funding budget for the next year to sign new talent.
Mm-hmm. Now, granted, there is one myth when it comes to team budgets that I always try and bust, and that is the idea that you can just throw money at a bunch of high tier players and you're guaranteed a championship. I have seen, and I'm pretty sure you have as well, seen plenty of cases where somebody's throwing money around like water and it amounts to nothing.
Essentially,
yeah.
Like you could get every big name player.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it'll blow your funding cap, but you could do it, and you could still end up being the bottom place.
Yeah. In the early 2000s, there was that much hyped dream team with the Eagles that everybody was dead set sure with the amount of talent that they had that they were going to the Super Bowl. They didn't even make the playoffs. And
yeah.
I will admit some of that is probably the case of the sports gods being very wrathful to any team that acts like winning is a guarantee.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that plenty of times. Somebody looks past their opponent and then they end up eating it. But the last one on the list is the Western Bulldogs.
Yep. They try hard, sort of can't really get too far. They haven't really won anything in quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
They try. Like a bulldog, they try.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of go, oh, you're cute. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing.
There was an infamous gaffe on ESPN with the Georgia in a Georgia Bulldogs game during the college football playoffs, where I don't know how this slipped past the QA when it came to the graphics, but for a brief second they were called the Bulldogs. This was on national television, so of course everybody screen capped it and memed the hell out of it.
So like watching some of the nameplates get mixed up and stuff like that in wrestling.
Yeah, like I can understand that when you're dealing with a lot of individual wrestlers, when you're dealing with just a few teams, and this was after ESPN made that exclusivity deal with the SEC, one of the college football conferences, and you know, it's not like Georgia is some brand new team. They're one of the blue bloods of the sport. And for reference, a blue blood in college football is reserved for that inner circle of the early teams in the sport. You know, like early 20th century kind of thing.
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing, it sounds like there was a big push toward expanding out of just Victoria, starting in the 90s. It sounds like.
Yeah.
And what was it a case where it was like one new expansion team every year for that span, or was it a bunch of expansion teams in one go?
It was sort of a progress over time thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like as the league expanded, they were adding more teams.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, we need to expand to X amount. It was just sort of like, okay, we have a lot of players in this area, so they might have enough facilities and everything else to actually host games, train players, stuff like that. So we'd look into giving them a franchise.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like some of them were cases of being integrated from other leagues.
not like they're sort of stealing anything from other leagues or anything like that, but it's like, yeah, the expansions and everything else. Like, there's trading stuff like that, all that type of stuff. Players signing for bigger money, all that junk.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the growth of the league. Usually, for a majority of it, they're refreshing players.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, most AFL players will stop by the age of 40, and then you bring up the young kids to fill their spot, train them, get them their experience, and you keep going. Yeah, new teams are getting rarer. Like, you have I think it was Gold Coast was the last one, like you said, in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
and Tasmania in 2028. Yeah, that's a long time before getting a new team.
Yeah.
So new teams are very rare to bring into the sport
Mm-hmm.
because they have to have a stadium to host games. They need to have training facilities for players. They need to be able to accommodate tourism and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of factors go into the idea before giving them a chance to have a team in that area.
Yeah.
Like the Tasmania one is, they are still going to be, the reason why it's going to 2028 is because they're still building the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have that finished first.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to have a situation where you're playing in a stadium that's too small, like what happened with the Chargers during their first year back in LA, where they're playing essentially in a football stadium for about a year or two because SoFi Stadium wasn't finished yet. So
that's the thing. They will, if the stadium is not ready, they will delay.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the stadium has to, obviously, it's got to be up to code structural wise.
Mm-hmm.
It's also got to be up to code size wise, because most of the main stadiums that host football will be the same size.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just, hey, I'm going to slap something together. It's a little bit smaller, but that'll do. No. If it's not the same size, they're going to go, well, we're going to pull this shit. Fuck you.
Yeah. And I think it seems that I've chosen a very good time to explore this sort of thing, since it does seem that much like how the NFL is trying to do international pushes, like doing games outside of the US, it seems that the AFL has experimented with that, whether it be playing a game in China or the international thing. There's a whole side article I came across about the Irish experiment.
Yes, we have had times where they've tried doing games in Europe, in China, in other countries. Some of them have been okay, some not so great.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. They're looking to expand it into an international market. Whether that means we're going to have international teams, probably not. But having the odd game outside of Australia, yeah, it'd be a novel thing. It'd be something for people to experience and see for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it's next year we're getting our first NFL game down here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to need American NFL down here for the first ever game in Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to send the Aussies over to you guys, and we'll show you how it's really fucking done.
Yeah, and when it comes, I know that there was some half joking talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars being moved over to London, and I had outright said that is never going to happen. And the reason it's never going to happen comes down to one word, and I'm pretty sure it's the reason you won't see any AFL teams that are headquartered in the US. Logistics. And just the amount of work that you'd have to do just to move a team around just in one country, let alone the international stuff, is going to be more trouble than it's worth, I think.
Yeah.
like that's going to be the interesting thing is sending AFL overseas is because our grounds are so specifically done in design and stuff like that. The adaptation of grounds in other locations makes it sort of a little bit harder to pull off.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'd have to do something like we'd have to find like a really big arena to put the game in. But even then, we're going to be shortening the field because of the way the American field layout works. Because we're going to work within the confines of your current setup.
And when I'm thinking about stadiums that might be able to pull that kind of thing off, there's really not a whole lot. I mean, and it's really the big ones that could pull it off. Things like SoFi or I was gonna say FedEx Field, but absolutely not. I don't even want to do local games.
I think SoFi is probably the best option.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know whether we draw the crowd because like a lot of people like if you go to America and you start talking football, I'm talking one thing, you guys are talking another.
It doesn't
But
help that there was
they go what?
Yeah. It doesn't help that before the merger there was a different AFL in the States.
Yeah, the American Football Crate.
Yeah, the American Football League.
Yeah.
Which
was more akin to soccer, wasn't it?
No, the AFL and the NFL were two competing football leagues. They're what would become the conferences because the Super Bowl was meant to be this unifying game between the champions of the two leagues when they merged.
Right.
And those two leagues would reincarnate as the NFL and the NFC and the AFC with the same more or less format that they had. The reason why there's that big A emblem on a lot of Chiefs uniforms is that they were I think one of the last AFL champions before the merger. And all the years after the merger are what's referred to as the Super Bowl era. So you have weird situations like technically the Green Bay Packers are the only team that three-peated, but it was in the late 60s before the merger, so it technically doesn't count.
Yeah.
But because of how things are set up, it does sound like it's not necessarily easy, but it is easier to three-peat in the AFL compared to the NFL.
Well, yes and no, kind of. A lot of it does come down to how good your team is at the time. Like I said, there is a lot of variables when it comes to just playing a game of AFL football. So you, as I said, you can have guys who they've been on a losing streak suddenly pull off a win, or they could go from being bottom of the ladder to the top. There's no sort of recurring theme. It's like over the last couple of years, people have been going, okay, we're going to see the Chiefs versus who, or we're going to see the Patriots versus who because of X, Y, Z. Certain players. None of that exists in AFL.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have a good team doesn't mean you're going to be consistently good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things of you're just going to end up learning over time. So yeah, you can't sort of just say, Essendon had a good year last year, that means they're going to have a good year this year. No. It means that you just got to see what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I said slightly easier, if only because there's just getting to the dance. There's so many things working against you.
Yeah.
Chief among them being unlike other sports, you're dealing with single elimination as opposed to as opposed to a multi-match bracket. You know,
Yeah.
NHL, NBA, they do best of 7 for each of the matchups in their tournaments. And because of that, you can kind of have a law of averages set up, though things can still happen. I mean,
Yeah. Law of averages doesn't work in this game.
Yeah.
This is like spinning a roulette wheel, essentially.
Which, for me, always makes things entertaining when I have no clue how things are going to go.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine I'm not the only one who thinks that way.
No. But, yeah, like, the main way... Like, it's really hard to sort of explain it without actually showing it. I might have to run a stream on my channel or something in some time. I've got an AFL game, I believe, somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably up on the shelf somewhere. I can't see it from here, but
Yeah, I do remember ranting that the AFL game that seems to have been better received on Steam is no longer available.
Yeah. But you can still buy it on PS4.
Yeah.
If you want to. We haven't got an AFL game on PS5 or Xbox yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure we'll get one probably in the next couple of years. Like the gaming scene for Australian football is because it's very niche. We don't get it that often.
Yeah. Personally, if I was able to,
even though it does date back to the NES.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first AFL games, licensed AFL games, was called Aussie Rules Football on the NES.
Mm-hmm. And personally, I feel, in comparison to the NFL, I do think the AFL rule set would lend itself more to a more arcadey style, as opposed to the NFL, which has always leaned towards simulation heavy for decades, much to my eternal annoyance.
That's what I wish would happen, but the most game studios that have made AFL games over the many years, they have always tried to push closer to a simulation style than they have an arcade style,
mm-hmm.
which I don't like. I like simulation games when you're playing stuff like Madden, PGA Golf, or anything NBA. That's fine. That's well and good. But when you have something that is a faster pace, where you're constantly on the move and everything else, you don't want to bog it down with simulation style gameplay. You want to keep it fast and frantic.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, the NBA 2K franchise is still going strong. That's only because people are idiots that seem to love throwing their wallets at the screen and saying, "Take my money."
Mm-hmm.
But when was the last time anybody actually sat and enjoyed an NBA game since the NBA Jam days?
Yeah, and I'm looking at the
that was the height of basketball games to me, was NBA Jam.
Yeah, and I'm looking at
fast-paced,
the
arcadey, fun, over the top. That's what you need.
Yeah, and I'm looking at these sports games that I have on Steam, and all of them are indies or doing something, are basically using the sport as a basics to do something else, like say grapple hoops, which is basically basketball combat in first person, or something like Robo Dunk. I do have the closest thing that I have to something simulation is stuff like Skater XL, which is a spiritual successor to the Skate series.
Yeah, and
I also put Windjammers 2 in there, but that's because I love Windjammers, and technically speaking, that's its own thing. But there is Knockout City, which was was basically someone doing a more open arcadey version of dodgeball.
Yeah.
The original servers went down, but just before the studio that made it got acquired by Blizzard, they put out the means to do private servers, saying here's the kit if you want to make a private server, which is the ultimate in classy moves. Basically saying, yeah, we don't have the official servers anymore, but if you want to keep the game running on your own stuff, here's how you can do it.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I like it when companies do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I fan run things, keeping games alive is great.
Mm-hmm.
I recently stumbled upon a site called was it Ultimate Dragon Ball Online,
Mm-hmm.
which takes the Dragon Ball Online MMO, running it off a private server, but they've actually gone and added to it. So they've added new characters, new abilities, new quest lines.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things. But yeah, getting well off track. But yeah, for like AFL games, not that many still exist. I'll probably see if my list is still around. I think I do actually own one recent AFL game, which is AFL Live 2.
Yeah.
On the PlayStation 4. So that was the last time I bought. Sorry, AFL Evolution 2 is the one I've got on PlayStation 4, and it's okay, but yeah, not a really ultra great game. They have, I don't know why, but like I think it's just because a lot of AFL games are sort of indie level style games. They don't quite nail it properly, but we try.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying. One day we'll get there. Maybe if we didn't have to change fucking consoles every time we made a new game, it'd be good.
Yeah, I think it might be an interesting thing if a game just went whole hog and instead of going for realistic graphics, just said fuck it, let's do pixel art. Try and do the AFL equivalent to like Tecmo Super Bowl or something.
Well, that's the thing, and I'll say, like, you can find the ROM online.
Mm-hmm.
Aussie Rules Football on the NES.
Mm-hmm.
Go, just type that in, Aussie Rules Football ROM NES. Download it. It is the simplest thing that you'll ever play. One button to kick, one button to handball, and that's all you really need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simple. The characters, like like obviously being NES, they're limited on pixel size and everything else. The teams aren't even the right damn colors. But you know what? It's a good game, and it'll give you a real quick and easy understanding of how AFL is played.
Mm-hmm.
If you jump into something like AFL Evolution 2, you've got so many buttons to kick, to pass, the strength of the pass, kick, and everything else. You're going to get confused.
Yeah,
it's like picking up a modern version of Madden. So many buttons that do so many different things. Go find one of the early ones and play the simple shit. I don't know why everything has to be so goddamn complex these days. Hell, I've got WWE 2K25 recently, and even that is stupidly complex.
Yeah.
Like to do simple, like I just want to pick the guy up and drag him on the mat. How do I do that? Well, you got to push B while holding the left bumper and pushing up on the right stick. I'm like, what? No. There used to be I could just hold two buttons and it'd drag him around properly. No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As somebody who's enjoyed sim racing, to a point, although I lean more towards Simcade, I've had that exact same problem within that genre, which is why I've taken the piss out of the current dominant entries in the sim racing category all looking the damn same. Like if you did the eyeball test between Assetto Corsa, R Factor 2, and Forza, could you really tell the difference between them? Aside from the one-time Forza flirted with Hot Wheels, which I don't count.
Forza flirted with Lego, and that was the greatest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
No, screw that. Give me American Truck Simulator.
Yeah. I mean, the racing game...
You can drive, turn left and right until you get to location. Brakes. Done.
Like, I've... like, when it comes to the last racing game, the last kind of racing games I'll recommend to people are more arcadey stuff, like say, Wreckfest, for instance, which is it is a demo derby in playable form.
Give me the good old burnouts, man. Give me the good old burnouts.
There's definitely a lot of burnout DNA in Wreckfest, and you can do traditional races with a whole lot of beating and banging, or you can just do a full-on demo derby, which is exactly what you think it is.
Yep. Now, I am looking at the clock. We have gone almost the lengths it takes to play 2 full football games in trying to explain the damn thing and everything else.
Yeah.
Is there any questions in the chat from anybody at this point in time? Any information that I can expel before we wrap this up and let people get on with their evenings?
I think we more or less covered everything. There's some side things. There was the whole thing of difference between rugby and American football, but I did do a bit of checking, and I will close off on how somebody from outside of Australia can watch. There is a partnership with Fox Sports, and there is the whole thing with Fox Soccer Plus if somebody wants to stream it. Beyond that, you can catch them on FS1 and FS2. The grand final is an FS1 exclusive, and of course the whole thing with the app. There's also
if you use the 7 Plus website, which is the 7plus.com.au,
mm-hmm.
That's the number 7 plus and the word plus.com.au. Via a VPN, you'll be able to watch through there. The grand final is on 7 Plus exclusively, so you'll be able to watch it via there.
Yeah, it is as far as streaming options. It is available on Fubo TV in the US, primarily because Fubo is under the same umbrella as Fox, and Sling through the Blue or Orange Plus Blue subscriptions, apparently, which I can't comment on personally because I've never used Sling TV. There is also an option on YouTube TV if you want to go that route. So there's not as many options as some sports, but there are options available. But I think as we get close to the 2-hour mark, I do want to thank you for being open to entertaining all of my dumb questions about your national sport. And
look, it's the only way people learn is by asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
When we just stop asking questions, we don't learn anything, and when we don't learn anything, that's bad for everybody.
Oh yeah, and I'll probably end up catching games late off and on. I'm not going to say I'm going to catch every game, but I'm going to keep an eye out when I can. And I am subbed to the AFL's YouTube channel, so there's probably going to be plenty of recaps as we start the season in earnest.
I'll see what I can do. We might tee up a night where I can run the 7 Plus website and stream on Discord for you to show a game. So if you have questions on the fly, we can always cover that at another time.
Oh yeah, that's something to plan for down the road, especially when we get closer to the grand final.
Yes,
but
highly possible. But usually the wife and I will sit down in the lounge room and watch together there with a tray of party pies and sausage rolls and drink beer as is tradition.
Oh yeah. But with that said, as always, a sincere thanks to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens around here. And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Yes, and I will definitely say, if you are going to drink anything, do not shotgun soy sauce because it tastes terrible.
I don't even like putting soy sauce on my food, period. It's too salty.
Yeah, I have it. I have it on sushi and dim sims, but I just had a little packet just sitting here. I was like, oh, I'll just have this. It's like, nope. No, not gonna have it on its own. Too salty. Yeah, nope.
But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.